So we had a portaloo.
Okay.
What do you call them around the rest of the world?
Porta potty.
Just outside of our house for about 3 months.
Yeah, in the Australian summer heat. Was not pretty. Yeah, she got fragrant.
Welcome to the Tiny House Lifestyle Podcast, the show where you learn how to plan, build, and live the tiny lifestyle. I'm your host, Ethan Waldman, and this is episode 202 with Colin and Megan Leeson. Is buying a tiny house shell really a good idea? This week, my guests Colin and Megan Leeson tell the story of their pre-built shell, why empty nesting doesn't always stay that way, and some of the clever and innovative features they built into the deck of their gorgeous 40-foot tiny home on wheels. Don't miss the conversation. I want to tell you about something that I think will be super helpful as you plan, design, and build your tiny house. Tiny House Decisions is the guide that I wish I had when I was building my tiny house. It comes in 3 different packages to help you on your unique tiny house journey. And if you're struggling to just figure out the systems for your tiny house, like how you're going to heat it, how you're going to plumb it, what construction technique are you going to use, like SIPs or stick framing or steel framing? Tiny House Decisions will take you through all these processes systematically and help you come up with a design that works for you. Right now, I'm offering 20% off any package of Tiny House Decisions. For listeners of the show, you can head over to thetinyhouse.net/THD to learn more and use the coupon code TINY at checkout for 20% off any package. Again, that's thetinyhouse.net/THD and use the coupon code TINY for 20% off. All right, I am here with Colin and Megan Leeson. Empty nesters Colin and Megan decided to go tiny once their daughters left the family home. They started researching and building their house through 2017 and 2018 and have lived in it since January of 2019. Colin and Megan are focused on having less while living more, and the tiny house affords this lifestyle. Colin and Megan, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having it.
Yeah, it's great to be here with you.
Yeah, great to be here with you as well. And thank you, as we were talking before we started recording, that it's early in the morning where you are. Can you share where you are?
Sunny Brisbane, Australia.
Lovely. That's coming from snowy, gray Vermont, USA. That sounds really nice right now.
Yeah, we win.
Yes, I'm
There's
sure.
Never any snow in Queensland.
All right. Well, I would miss the snow if I never had it, but shorter winter. But anyhow, enough about me. So you two started researching in 2017 and 18. Was there something in particular that kind of made you go from just being kind of interested in tiny houses to being like, we're going to build a tiny house?
Yes, that was Megan. We'd been watching some of the tiny house shows on the television, and we previously liked things like treehouse shows, and I used to think I could so easily live in something little like that, but I thought there's no way Megan could live in something like that. And one day we were watching one of those shows, and she just said, I reckon I could do that. And I almost fell off my chair, and we raced on from then.
Nice. You fell off your chair because you didn't think that she would ever be interested in something like that?
Exactly. It was just something I didn't think she'd ever be interested in.
It had also come off the tail end of helping Colin's parents downsize as well. Like, his mum got really sick, and so they had to downsize the family home from all of this stuff to fit in an aged care facility. And so that was playing on my mind, thinking, oh my gosh, we have to do this to our kids at some stage. And so you kind of think of minimizing and downsizing. So now we're minimized. They can pack the house up in a day. They're good.
Yeah. So you've done your kids a favor that they won't have to help you minimize and downsize a ton at some point.
Yeah.
So you worked with a builder on your shell, and then you finished out the inside yourselves. Why did you decide to do it that way?
Yeah, all right. So To stretch that story a little bit, my background, originally I did a trade as a cabinet maker,
Okay.
and for me, that meant going to trade school, which taught the building course with kind of a specialist for me in my experience of cabinet making. So
Mm-hmm.
in the end, I had the theory of how to build a timber frame house, normal building knowledge, but I'd never actually done it. My entire career in that area was with cabinet making.
Okay.
So it's probably one of those scenarios where you know enough to know you don't know enough. And so I knew the theory of how to do a house, but I wasn't comfortable doing it myself. So the first part of the reason we had someone else do our shell
Mm-hmm.
was to make sure it was done correctly. The second part of that, though, was time. And so we were renting the house that we were in prior to this. And so we knew that if we were to build the shell as well as all of the internals, it could add maybe another year to the project, which is a year's worth of rent. So to speed things along, we went with that.
Oh, and yeah, so when it arrived here on the trailer, it was fully done. It was painted just like you see in the pictures and the Instagrams. So an instant house dropped into the neighbourhood, and it wasn't a building zone and a really messy thing. We wanted to make kind of a grand entrance so that we weren't going to be the bane of the neighbourhood. We just wanted to settle in. We're on a couple of no-through roads, but we wanted to make friends instantly and not go, oh my gosh, what are those people doing? Yeah.
Yeah, that's a interesting point and a benefit that you might not always think about is that when you have that shell, you instantly look like a completed house. Nobody else can see what's on the inside.
Mm. Oh, it was a mess inside when we got it. It was just a bare shell with a stair module. That was it. Like,
wow.
The outside definitely did outshone the inside, but it didn't take long for the inside to get ready too.
Nice.
Yeah, so outside was fully locked up, obviously, but painted and all.
Mm.
Inside was nothing. So we started with no electrics, no plumbing, no insulation or anything. Because the design is sort of galley kitchen straight through rather than U-shaped things at the end, I was able to start constructing a lot of the modules, the kitchen. Megan mentioned the stair modules, so sort of little spiral stairs that go up to our mezzanine loft and our bedroom gooseneck part. I was able to make them all in advance. And in fact, some of those sort of became structurally part of the build anyway. So I was building those units, taking them to where the manufacturer was building our shell, a couple of hours north of us on the Sunshine Coast in Queensland, and they were building them in. When we received it, we raced straight into electrical plumbing and then began lining and fitting out the insides.
All the fun stuff.
Very nice. And I will say the cabinets are gorgeous. So very nice job.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm sure you'll ask us at some stage our favourite parts or whatever. Megan loves to cook. She's a great cook and loves the kitchen. So having a sizable but functional and very nice kitchen was high on her, and therefore our plans.
My non-compromising list.
That's right.
Yes. I like that. So you had a non-compromising list. Can you say more about that?
We were both pretty fluid with how things turned out. Like, we had an idea of what we wanted, but right from early on, I was very set in my ways about what I wanted with the kitchen, and I was the bane of Colin's life with the planning and the designing of it, to the point that I actually signed a template that he had drawn up to say I would not change the kitchen anymore. But yeah, kitchen was my non-compromising thing. I don't know what yours was. I've forgotten what yours was.
I think again, probably slightly different conversation, but at the very beginning, we made a couple of initial decisions. And the first one was we're getting old and older, and we're still early 50s.
Yeah, you don't look all that old to me, so don't sell yourself short.
This early morning light is very flattering.
I say we're in our very late 30s. Anyway, we intend this, I guess, to be our forever home. And so considering later we're going to be a bit older, not having to crawl into a bedroom loft was really our first kind of realistic decision. And so that meant kind of going down the path of a larger gooseneck house, which has a few other things attached to it too. How do you move that house? Well, ours, like I'd imagine most other tiny houses, are rarely going to move. And so we wouldn't be bothered buying a big vehicle capable of towing even a medium-sized house, let alone something this big. So decision 2 was to let the professionals do that. And so ours is set up to be towed by a prime mover. And so if we ever need it, we need a truck to come in and move it for us. And then the last bit that kind of cascaded out of that decision tree, if you like, was to be able to go a little bit wider, because a truck can just stick. In Australia, they put oversize on the back or wide load or whatever each country does, and they are able to tow something a little bit bigger. So ours is 3 metres in Australia, and that'd be 10 foot, I think, in American.
Yep, and 12 meters long, which is about 40 feet.
40 foot, yeah.
That's
it's a large one.
The big tiny.
Yeah.
But that is another process that we went through. We kind of thought, if we go too small, going from a big house to a really tiny space and still having family and friends come over. I know other people do it, but for us, we just wanted to have a little bit of breathing room and enjoy the process and not want to sell it a couple of years down the track.
Of course.
Because we hated it. So if the situation came, we probably could go a little bit tinier. I might complain a little bit, but
not by much.
Yeah.
I often say you need to be realistic.
Yeah.
About going tiny, and for us that meant occasional one of our daughters at home. In fact, one of our daughters is living with us now and has been now for a couple of months, and will for a few more. And so to be able to fit 3 adults in here comfortably. Later on, there might be grandkids that we'll be hosting here and having friends over. We've watched lots of shows, listened to lots of things. You see on the show something like Family of 5 move into a tiny house, and then a few months later you see that same tiny house up for sale on Tiny House Hunter show.
Yep.
And you then say, well, perhaps that wasn't being fully realistic in the first place. So I think anyone considering a move to a tiny house needs to be a little bit realistic in what they plan and what they end up with.
Yeah, that's good advice. It's sometimes it's hard to see the future, but if you can envision how you might want to use your home over the next several years or for as long as you can think of it, you can save yourself a future move.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we spent months planning this before we even committed to anything. We'd sit and sketch and draw and figure out the logistics. We had our kitchen layout and bathroom layout taped on the floor of our living room in the old house down to where the toilet was, the shower was, so we could move in the space like you see on the shows.
Yeah.
And we tweaked our design, and we spent so much time just planning before anything was built, and I think that really paid off for us.
It's worth sharing that process. And I was just going to say, with the taping down, we had a fairly large living room with a big television, and we marked out how wide, in our case, because we sit sideways for the lounge room, how wide it was going to be, and we pushed the lounge up to the exact right distance from where the TV was going to be and tested that all out. What I meant by worth expanding on, I mentioned I had the trade as a cabinet maker, which means I learned how to look at a plan and kind of transfer it three-dimensionally to understand how it looks.
Yeah.
That's something Megan hadn't learned and wasn't able to do. So it was different from me trying to think or describe how something would work as to how she would do it. And so we had to work together to have a 3D sort of a sketch or something laid out on the floor, or in fact I ended up teaching myself Google SketchUp to make 3D models so that Megan could understand what a plan was showing us, or what I was trying to show on on a drawing.
I'm a visual girl. I need pictures and I need the sketches to see it.
And lots of people are like that. So.
Yeah. And that advice was also helpful when we took it to the builder as well, so they could understand what we wanted. We could just quickly pull that up and show them, and they go, oh, yep, okay, yeah. So everybody could see what we wanted. It was there, and then it was all transferred to plans. Like when we went to our builder, we went with a pile of stuff this big and said, we want this, do this. And so we all sat down together and sorted it out and went from there.
Very nice. Yeah. And I'm sure that on some level your builder appreciated that because, you already had done the design work and it was a matter of transferring it into building plans and building it.
Correct, exactly. It's probably worth sharing the earlier design phase as well. So we've been watching the shows on the TV and YouTube and whatever, and we'd see something we like and we'd record that. So I ended up with this sketchbook that Megan mentioned with kind of an index at the front referencing things. And so we might have seen the way a window looked or the way a loft looked or anything else on a particular show, and we'd reference it down to this was found on Tiny House Nation episode 5 at 3 minutes and 75 seconds. I don't think seconds go that high, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we could go back and look at those things. And then, after picking up all those little pieces we liked, plus the things we already had in our mind, sort of stitching them together into our final design. That part's obviously not rocket science, but using the things you find and referencing them for later checking, I think worked really well for us, and I'm sure good for everyone.
Yeah, definitely. How long did it take for you to build out the inside, once you got your shell?
So that happened in two parts. So we'd received it in the September of, since 2020, everything kind of blurs, doesn't it? That'd be September 2018, I think. I had the kitchen mostly constructed, the vanity and a few other modules that were ready to go straight in, already done while the external build was happening. We worked, I sort of, for the last months of that year, so September, October, November, December, or the first half of December, would get up as early as I could, go to work, do my job, come home at about lunchtime, and then I would work on the house until Megan came home and joined me, and then into when it was too dark to work, really. Mm-hmm. We got it up to a stage by that December that we were able to, we went to the UK where our daughter lives, and came back in January and moved straight into the house. It wasn't complete though, and we had some things still to finish, some things that we were kind of phasing in, like for example the kitchen bench tops are marble. We needed a bit of a delay financially to get those in, so we had temporary bench tops for probably a year. For people who might have found our house on Living Big in a Tiny House's nice big deck around it, it took a while to put on, and in fact the covering of that deck, one of those insulated panel roofs, we've only put on just before Christmas this year. So the short answer to your question is 3 months of very intensive work by both of us, and
still no toilet at the end of those 3 months.
True. We can talk about the toilet. So our toilet,
big factor in tiny living.
We've gone for an incinerating toilet, which is a little bit unusual and quite expensive, but it has its benefits. But there was a delay in receiving it, so we had a portaloo.
Okay.
What do you call them around the rest of the world?
Sure.
A little plastic
porta potty,
just outside of our house for about 3 months. 4 months
in the Australian summer heat was not pretty. Yeah, she got fragrant. So yes, the sacrifices were made. People think we moved into this picture perfect house, but we didn't. We just did things as we could, and it's been fun drawing at the project rather than going hell for leather and just getting everything done. Like we've still got projects we want to do. The wardrobe, getting a new lounge with a sofa bed, and he's definitely a projects guy, so he likes having something to tinker on. So there's still a job list for him to finish.
So I was saying through the project, it's kind of like when you go on holidays and the holiday's over before you know it, and suddenly everything's back to normal. And so slow down and enjoy the process.
Mm-hmm.
And I was saying, I'm not wishing it was finished because I'm enjoying doing it. And it'll be finished eventually, and we'll enjoy it differently then. But for now, let's enjoy doing it. And we did that mostly, I think. Yeah.
That's nice. That to be able to do that and keep that perspective in mind, that it will eventually be done, and then once it's done, it's done.
Well, then COVID will be finished and we can get back to travel.
Yes.
It also, not that we really did it here, but it gives the opportunity of tweaking things or changing things as you go along. If you start to live in the house and you plan to put something somewhere and you find that's not quite right, you can make small adjustments as you go.
I'd like to tell you a little bit more about Tiny House Decisions, my signature guide, and the resource that I wish I had when I was building my tiny house. It starts with the big decisions, which is, should you build a tiny house yourself or with help? Is a pre-built shell a good idea? Is a house on wheels better than on the ground, and what works better for you? Deciding on the overall size, deciding on whether you should use custom plans or pre-made plans, different types of trailers, and more. Then in part 2, we get into the systems. So heat, water, showers, hot water, toilets, electrical, refrigeration, ventilation. And we're only 2/3 of the way through the book at this point. From systems, we go into construction decisions, talking about nails versus screws, SIPs versus stick framed versus advanced framing versus metal framing. We talk about how to construct a subfloor, sheathing, roofing materials, insulation, windows, flooring, kitchen. I know I'm just reading off the table of contents, but I just want to give you a sense of how comprehensive Tiny House Decisions is. It's a total of 170 pages. It contains tons of full color drawings, diagrams, and resources. And it really is the guide that I wish I had when I was building my tiny house. Right now, I'm offering 20% off any package of Tiny House Decisions using the coupon code TINY when you head over to thetinyhouse.net/THD. That's THD for Tiny House Decisions. Again, that's coupon code TINY when you check out at thetinyhouse.net/THD. So is travel one of the reasons why you wanted to live tiny?
One of my big reasons, yes. I'm a late bloomer when it came to travel. So we had our kids very young, so we kind of had the basics. We weren't well off, and still not well off. And so when our daughter moved overseas, that was my first overseas trip. And I have definitely got the bug, and I have got a long list of places I want to visit in Europe. And so, yes, now that this is done, we've kind of taught ourselves to be more financially responsible.
Mm-hmm.
And we're making great headways, and the travel fund is starting to look exciting again.
Yeah.
And so it matches with the philosophy of a lot of tiny house people, and that is to live more and have less.
Absolutely.
And the living more, the biggest part of living more for us is to be able to do some travel and enjoy that for a while.
Absolutely. So you've actually added, I want to talk about the wood shop, but I do want to ask, why the incinerating toilet? What were the benefits of that made you decide to go with one over the other options?
I did not want to deal with the composting toilet, and I put my hand up very quickly and said, I'm not doing that. And Colin goes, well, I'm not doing that. And I said, all right, incinerating toilet it is.
That's not the only benefit. Let me put my spin on it too, and I agree. If you're thinking about it without having ever done it or whatever, you kind of get turned off. I know, and I'm sure everyone who now does it as a normal part of their life, it's all normal. We decided though that we didn't want to do that. I think though there's a couple of extra benefits for us, albeit expensive benefits. We, like most people, are renting a spot on somebody else's property for our home. And my thoughts are, if us as a tiny house dweller are approaching someone to be a landlord, the first question they will have running through their mind is what happens with the toilet waste.
Yep.
And if you have to go to them, will I use one of these various composting methods? That might scare them, and it might mean losing that property. Whereas to be able to go up to someone like we are to say, well, we don't produce any of that waste, everything's incinerated down to nothing, we felt that would make a big difference to finding a location. Probably later on too, our plan probably is to try and find our own land, probably closer to our retirement time and probably out of Brisbane itself. If we are trying to go through the approval process with a local council here to live, air quotes, legally in the house, then again, I think that will really help. Otherwise, setting up septic systems, which incidentally cost in Australia a lot more than our incinerating toilet cost, would make that more complicated.
Yeah. And you've done quite a bit of improvements to the land that you're renting, because it looks like the deck for your tiny house that's attached to the ground, and looks like you've got a beautiful garden, and that'll be a lot to move. Yeah.
So I'm pleased that it looks like that it's attached in the ground. Perhaps it isn't. So the deck itself is sitting on, in Australia, a product being sold called Tough Block, which is a plastic footing, and I'll use your measurements, about a foot square that a post would click into.
Okay.
And it's like a series of pads on the ground, and that's what our deck's sitting on. And not only that, it's on the top of the deck. We've laid the boards so they look like a traditional deck with offset joins. But underneath those boards are a series of modules, which if we had to move, we would just simply strip the boards off the top. So, I don't know, an hour or two with a battery tool, and then disassemble the modules underneath and lift them off those little feet, and we're good to move.
Wow.
So even though it looks like a lot of things are sort of in the ground here, they've all had a lot of careful planning of what happens when we need to move. Even the roof now above the deck is, like I said, one of those SIP roofs. We've put lighting and fans and switches, power points, I should say, up into that roof that are all cascading off a single power point plug, and everything in there is smart controlled so that we don't have to be wiring switches to turn any of them on. So in the case of needing to move, we can just disassemble those roof panels and drop what's really probably a wiring harness out of it, pack it all up, move it, reassemble it later. So, yeah, a fair bit of careful thought in how we would disassemble stuff. The garden, you're right, it's become a bit of a hobby for us and something we enjoy doing. It's obviously in the ground, and we would need to leave it if we move, but hopefully we'll get lots of enjoyment out of it between now and then.
And it was all done with the blessing of the landowners, who this was an unused corner of their block, and they regularly come up and sit on the deck and go, "You got the best view." So yeah, anything major we do, we obviously check with them first, but we maintain this corner of their block for them, and it's a good relationship. So yeah.
That's wonderful. Was it difficult to find a place to rent?
It's an amazing story, and I probably should share it with you. We work at a school, and the woman of the family who live here works at that same school. And so we had I think the trailer was being manufactured. We had to have it custom built as well. We didn't mention that earlier. The trailer was being built, and we were just starting to think about where we might put the house.
I had advertised in a couple of Facebook groups too prior to this,
And Megan was starting to cull some of the stuff in our house, doing our tear down, and had put an email around to the staff at the school saying, "I've got all this stuff we're trying to get rid of, and anyone want anything?" And this woman came and spoke to her and said, "Oh, what are you getting rid of your stuff for?" And Megan said, "Oh, we're building a tiny house, so we won't be able to take all this." And she went away, and in the meantime, I'd heard from another colleague at the school talking about how great this property that this family own is. And if you've seen any pictures, it's like living in a manicured garden. It's lovely.
Mm-hmm.
And you know how when you get so excited about something, you can't handle the thought of rejection, so you never do anything about it? It was like that for me. We should ask those people if they'd like to have us come to their house, but I'm so scared of a rejection that I'm not bringing myself to ask it.
Yeah.
So that's where I was. A few days later, this woman's come back to Megan and said, I've been talking with my husband and we would love it if you would consider putting your house on our property.
Oh, wow. So they asked you.
Requesting us to do it. So
that's awesome.
Couldn't believe it. And we came and had a look and it's absolutely magnificent. And it's a lovely location.
We got 11 out of 10.
Yeah, you can't beat that. And is your house fully off grid, or how do you get your water and how do you get your electricity?
So we connect to the grid for both water and electricity.
Okay.
Where we are right here, we're under trees, so a solar system wouldn't work fantastically. With our house, we're sort of positioning ourselves somewhere in the middle where it's a step in the right direction. We're reducing our environmental footprint, we're reducing our financial commitments and heading towards what some people think you need to do for tiny house living. So that, for us then, we're able to demonstrate that you can live tiny without going extreme, and that's fairly important to me particularly. That means we can still have a couple of big televisions in the house and we can still have air conditioning and everything else while still making a difference. I hope that's making sense. So we want to be able to show that we can make that difference and still consume a small amount of electricity. That being said, if down the track we can find a location and want to live somewhere where we can be off the grid, no objections to doing that.
At the moment, it's kind of chunking down.
Yeah.
So the next move will go down a little bit further. And yeah, as Colin said, there's no way we could really run solar here. There's so many beautiful native trees around us that regularly drop branches all over the roof and leaves everywhere. Water wouldn't be drinkable off this roof, but it's perfect location. So give and take.
Nice. Well, you mentioned it before, so now I have to ask the question, do you each have a favorite part of your tiny house?
Kitchen.
My part, I think, from how I enjoy the creativity of it is the bathroom. There's lots of things fitted into there, lots of little tricky storage solutions, plus lots of details which are really pleasurable.
It's like a jigsaw puzzle.
Yeah, it is. It took a lot to figure it out, and it looks really good. But I like, though, just lying on the bed up in our bedroom loft, which gives a view down kind of the hallway to the kitchen, plus television up in the bedroom just there. So that's my spot.
I do also like lying on the lounge. We did change our building plan like 3/4 of the way through from a full loft to a mezzanine because the builder sent us some pictures, and because the trailer was a little bit higher off the ground. Goosenecks are not common here in Australia like they are over there, so we had ours custom built, as Colin said. And it probably came back a little bit higher than we had anticipated, so we lost some of the room in the loft. And so we were going up on Saturday morning to view the tiny, and on Friday night we were sitting at a restaurant furiously scribbling all over napkins and scouring the internet trying to fix this problem of the roof so we could have a problem and a solution for the builder the next day. And I found this picture of a mezzanine loft, and that has been probably one of the best changes that we did mid-build that we weren't anticipating, because 90% of the time it's just Colin and I here. It now allows some more natural light into the living room, and it's an unusual feature. And I love just kind of seeing the bearers. What do you call them?
Yeah, so that'd be the bearers. So you kind of look up through a couple of bearers into really avoid beside the mezzanine. So it's a really unusual and interesting look.
Yeah.
Nice. And now you mentioned that you're no longer empty nesters because you've got a third adult living with you. So did they live in the mezzanine?
They do. And
right.
I forget she's there sometimes. She was up there asleep the other day, and I came in and said, hi. And nobody answered, and she was asleep. And I forgot she was up there. So, yeah, she fitted in seamlessly. Like, she was out helping Colin with doing the floor in the workshop yesterday. She jumps in and helps with cooking. I kind of like having her around, and she's not taking up a lot of real estate. And it's good because she's been living away up far north Queensland. So for her to come home and reconnect, it's lovely.
Yeah.
Well, it's worked surprisingly well for the three adults in here. I wondered how well it would work, but yeah, it's been really easy.
Yeah.
You can always come home and live with your parents, even if they're in a tiny house.
Well, the other one's thinking about coming home too from the UK, so that's going to be interesting.
I wonder how Paul will go here.
They'll have to move into the wood shop.
Maybe.
So, just looking through your Instagram feed, I've dealt with pests in my house like mice and ants. Never a giant snake, though. Can you tell us about the snake?
Yeah, you wouldn't believe this story. We were having an air conditioner installed actually, and this was only a couple of months ago as well.
Between Christmas and New Year.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. In the gap between the New Year. So the electricians were here, and the indoor units in the house here next to us above the bathroom, the outdoor units tucked right in underneath the gooseneck part. And we were working down there, and the young woman who helps the electricians going, oh, you got a pet snake? And we went, oh, no, we wouldn't like snakes. She said, that one there. And we looked, and it was literally, we'd been crawling under this thing with the chassis of the trailer literally above our head with this snake that, again, I'm thinking probably 6 foot long and 2 inches around in its belly, just sitting there.
It's terrifying.
Now, it's not as not as scary as it ought to be. In Australia, we have two lots of snakes. There are some very poisonous ones. So, yeah, in Australia, we have several species of very poisonous snakes.
I think the whole world knows that.
Yeah, the whole world kind of hears that about Australia. But we have some quite placid ones, and this is one of those ones. Yeah. They're not poisonous.
They still scare the daylights out of you.
Yeah, yeah. And so this girl's pointed this thing out. We've all sort of jumped, scurried away, and then had to remove that
to get rid of it
so we could finish the project.
Yeah. So every time our clothes dryer is also kept under there on rainy days when I need it, and our rubbish bin is under there as well. So anytime I need to go there, I'm down there looking up underneath the gas, the struts and everything. And the neighbour who removed the snake one day saw me doing it and goes, "Snake, Megan, move." And I jumped so fast, and his wife belted him and said, "Don't do that. That's not funny." I don't think I've spoken to him since, actually.
Yes.
So, yeah, that being said, Australia's not as bad as people think it is. It scares the daylights out of you, but he serves a purpose. He keeps the mice down from the chooks and everything else. But yeah, at night time, it's not what you want to find.
Yeah, no. Well, one thing that I like to ask all of my guests is what are 2 or 3 resources that have helped you on your tiny house journey that you'd like to share with our listeners?
I think probably the answer we've talked about before would be TV shows and YouTube videos and things.
Yeah.
We had a lot of influence on our design from various things we saw around different shows. Probably for me also, the background in cabinet making gave me an opportunity to do a few interesting projects which led to some ideas from this.
Mm-hmm.
I joined some of the Facebook groups very early just to kind of get a feel for the Aussie ones more than the international ones.
Yep.
And kind of see how things were. And we actually got a reference for our builder from one of those local meetups. We only went to one and it worked out to be very handy. And Instagram.
Okay.
I used Instagram a lot for kind of design things and just seeing what other people did. And I don't know, I could do that anytime. So, yeah, for me, it would have been Facebook and Insta. But, yeah, certainly watching the TV shows as well, getting a feel for it and a walkthrough was handy.
Yeah.
When we went to the builder that we engaged, we were able to look at a few shells and partly finished houses there, and that also gave us a feeling, probably more helped us decide on the size. So having a look at some tiny houses, go to one of those jamborees or convention things, that would also help people.
Nice.
When people walk into ours, they're very surprised because they think they're just going to walk into a caravan and it's going to be low, but we've intentionally kept our entry the full height.
Mm-hmm.
And people are amazed at the sense of space. So, yeah, everyone's a visual person. So, yeah, looking, researching, getting out there, talking to people, valuable resource.
Nice. Well, Colin and Megan, thank you so much for being guests on the show today. And again, for waking up early for me. I'm glad you had your coffee and I can't wait to share this with our listeners.
I'm ready for another one.
That's been our pleasure. Thanks again for having us.
Thank you so much to Colin and Megan Leeson for being guests on the show today. You can find the show notes, including a full transcript, some images of the Leesons' beautiful tiny house, and more at thetinyhouse.net/202. Again, that's thetinyhouse.net/202. Well, that's all for this week. I'm your host, Ethan Waldman, and I'll be back next week with another episode of the Tiny House Lifestyle Podcast.